Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Soul Goals Podcast. I'm Dawn, and I'm so glad you're joining me today. This podcast is dedicated to bringing people's stories to light and hearing their journeys of inspiration and self-growth. But it's also about connection and knowing that you are not alone. Each week, I get the chance to sit down and talk with an amazing soul, someone I've had the blessing of either meeting or following in my life. I am so grateful for my guests. Their openness and their vulnerability, it is unmatched as we share heartfelt conversations together about both their challenges and their triumphs. I hope that you can grab some inspiration and connection from my guests and their stories. I know I certainly have with each conversation. What an honor to sit with these brave souls. Everyone has a story, folks. And every story matters. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Goals. My name is Dawn, and I'm so glad that you are joining us today here on the podcast for another great episode with an awesome guest. I originally came across Graham Honeycutt from Tucker's House through a friend of a friend. And after talking with my friend about, hey, I have a really good guy that would be a great guest with an amazing story to be on your show. Would you be interested in talking to him? I'm like, absolutely. And our mutual friend Marcel was like, you really need to talk to Graham. I was like, absolutely. Absolutely. Graham Honeycutt, rather. Sorry. I butchered your last name right there already. Graham Honeycutt is from the Middle Tennessee area. He works with a company, and he's a CEO of the company actually right now, called Tucker's House, and it is in the Franklin, Tennessee area. And what Tucker's House does, it's a nonprofit organization that helps to provide modifications, renovations, remodels to existing homes for families that have kids with disabilities. And in essence, what it does is it helps to make the home safe and a little bit more accessible, not only for the children with the disability, but for the family and kind of the routine of the family, and to make things flow a little bit easier. Because if you have a child that is disabled and you know that plight and everything that goes into it, depending upon the severity of it, your routine is packed. It's packed. There's a lot going on. And I'm so excited to have Graham sharing this story today, because it's actually a story about how he got to Tucker's House and the job that he is in right now, based on his firsthand experience with his daughter, Mikayla. So without further ado, I would like to welcome to the show, Graham Honeycutt. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much. If you did a better intro, I think I'd have to put you on staff at Tucker's House. So that was great.
Well, let's go. I'm sorry wonderful. I butchered your name. I'll make sure.
Oh, it's okay. It's all good. I've answered with the name Graham Honeycutt. I've answered I have many nicknames with the honey and the golden grams and the cereals, and
I can imagine.
So yeah. So I'm good with whatever.
Well, you have 5 children. You were saying before we hit the record, 9 years and under.
Yes, and 5 children at home. Yeah,
that's
9 and under.
Right? I think this was the first thing that I asked you, was like, are you sleeping? And your reply was that you had a friend actually look at you and say, you're so calm for having so many children at those ages. And you're like, it's just pure exhaustion.
Yeah, it's just exhaustion. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I love it. So Graham, as the executive director at Tucker's House, you see regularly families that have children that have severe disabilities, as well as young adults too. It's not just children. And right. Being a nonprofit organization, you do have to go through an application process, because families don't pay anything for the service, which is amazing. Right. Yeah. And when you first got into this, in this organization, when you first learned of it, rather, it was because you had a special needs daughter. And I would love to hear a little bit more about your sweet Mikayla.
Yeah. So we have a daughter named Mikayla. She passed away in 2018. But she was born with a rare congenital brain malformation called Dandy-Walker syndrome. Mm-hmm. So in science and medical speak, she basically had excess fluid where brain matter should be. So She was born with a host of challenges. developmental challenges, and then physical delays as well.
Yeah.
But it's just a super sweet kid. I miss her every day. But yeah, she just brought a whole lot of joy to our lives, in addition to just figuring out everything that goes along with raising a special needs child. But when she was, I guess, 4, we had reached out through our therapist. They let us know about Tucker's house. So we never got to the point where we did permanent modifications to our home because she was still fairly young. But even at 5, she was just getting to the point where it was really, I was the only one able to bathe her. I was the only one able to physically lift her. Like her mom couldn't lift her anymore. So even at that age, there was just some challenges with bathing and manual transfers, diaper changes, feedings, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So, Tucker's house did initial assessment. They helped us get a bed and do a temporary ramp for our home, with the thought process that eventually we would do a permanent bathroom remodel and a permanent ramp situation. But unfortunately, she passed before we got to that point.
Right.
And so, we actually ended up moving because the house we were previously in just wasn't, it was going to take so much to renovate that home that it just made more sense for us. And this is before the housing market was so crazy.
Yes.
In Nashville, like now, I don't think we could do it. We couldn't move. We couldn't afford to move. But back then it was still, fairly, it wasn't so difficult to move. So we moved at that time. But yeah, that's my entree into Tucker's house. And then after she passed, I stayed in touch with the founder. And actually have a background in golf. So I used to be a golf professional.
Wait, you were a golf professional?
Yeah, not a professional golfer. Don't get them confused. A golf professional. I didn't play on tour, but I taught lessons and worked as a golf professional. A PGA golf professional at a course, and then for the association. And so I helped after Mikayla passed. I helped them run their golf tournament for 2 years.
Tucker's house.
Tucker's house, just as, a volunteer thing to do. Hey, I ran golf tournaments for a living. Yeah. So, why not do a charity scramble? And then, Sunny reached out, and she was looking to retire.
Okay.
And when she first reached out, she said, hey, in 2 years, I'm looking to retire. I said, okay, well, I guess let's talk in 2 years. And 2 years became 2 months.
Oh, fast.
And so she ended up staying with Tucker's house an additional 2 years as a staff person, but I came on as the executive director.
Okay.
And then it was right during the pandemic, I signed my contract, and
oh my goodness,
it was, I started April 20th of 2020. So,
wow.
Right as the pandemic
right at the start, the thick of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's kind of how, I came to be at Tucker's house. But yeah, it's very personal for me. It's, I tell people too, I wear this little band with Mikayla's name around it. I bring her along every day to work, and, I see her in the faces of the families we serve. And I just, I sit there and say, okay, well, what will Mikayla do? And how can I make Mikayla proud? And
my goodness,
that's kind of how I view the work. And whenever there's a difficult day or a difficult decision, that's just how I try to keep it all in perspective.
Right. So, well, I love that. I love that perspective. It keeps it very personal for you, but also it makes it very relatable for the people that you're helping too. And I think that, tell me, let's back up just a little bit. Tell me, she was in utero. She hadn't been born yet when you first found out that she was diagnosed with Dandy Walker syndrome.
Yes. Yes.
So you knew that she was going to be born with a disability, but you had no idea what the severity of it was going to be. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So she was diagnosed at her 20-week ultrasound. It was actually our first child too. So, we didn't even, we were just there for the first 20-week ultrasound. And so, I just really remember because it wasn't the doctor, it was the ultrasound tech just said, hey, there's a problem with the brain. We don't know what it is, but let's, and so then we had the doctor, and they actually sent us to another clinic that did further testing. And so went to another clinic that afternoon, and the doctor there just said, your daughter has Dandy Walker syndrome. at that point too, they said, she really has a 1 in 4 chance of surviving the pregnancy
Oh
itself.
goodness.
And then, she just said if she does survive, she's most likely going to have really significant special needs.
Right.
And so, I just think even then, like even her just making it through the pregnancy was, even that was, not necessarily like predictable. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And, it was difficult. Like she was actually, I mean, she had a lot of struggles when she
Yeah.
lived, but her health was kind of on the upward swing, right around when she passed. So it was like even more just kind of a surprise, like, cause you
Yeah.
always hold that in your mind. Like, she had surgeries and hospital stays and all these things, but
Mhm.
she seemed really healthy.
Mhm.
And so it was more of a, I won't call it a freak accident, but it's just, one of her shunt apparatus broke.
Okay.
And so she had a shunt that drained that fluid, that excess fluid from her hydrocephalus into her abdomen.
Yes.
And they said that it broke and it malfunctioned. And so all that fluid just went straight to her brain. And so she went brain dead almost instantly.
Oh my
They said.
goodness.
So,
Oh.
so it wasn't like a heart failure, like her organs were all perfectly healthy and everything. It was just all that fluid once just kind of, so it was, but that apparatus, that man-made apparatus, right, is what was keeping her alive. So,
Yeah. So that's kind of
but
like it's like a double-edged sword almost. It's like you're grateful for that technology and for
yeah.
that medical intervention, but yet then you look at it and you go, how could this have failed in that point? How did you? I'm interested to know how, knowing that happened so quickly, like it did. How
Mhm.
did that affect you and your wife in that capacity?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of like where we were in life quickly, or
Mhm.
like quickly as in like she passed very quickly
Yeah,
based
you
on
weren't.
the.
You're saying it happened kind of like it was
Oh yeah, it was.
instantaneously almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You kind of go back and recount, and it's like I've now, like having lost a child, you like meet other people who lose children, and you kind of walk in grief with them, and you
Yeah.
understand where they are in a sense. But it's like I've also known parents who had children that passed away, but it was a very long process, right? Like maybe they had cancer,
Right.
and they went through treatments, and it took them, like they ended up passing. It might have been like 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
and ours was like that. It's like one day you woke up, everything's fine, and then it happened. So I don't, I don't know. Like I think it's because I'm fortunate that I haven't had another child pass in that.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't really compare necessarily, but I think
Mhm.
the grief process is just a little bit different. I think
Yeah.
there's almost like a continuous grief, and you wake up every day with this mindset that it might be today, my child might pass when there's the cancer piece. Whereas like for
Yeah.
us, it was just like, my daughter was alive that morning, and by the afternoon she was gone, you know?
Wow, Graham.
And so like, they still had to run different tests and everything, but it's like, I just knew the way the doctors were talking that afternoon that she wasn't going to pull through.
Right.
And I don't think it really hit me until that night time, when I feel like I had so much adrenaline just trying to like make the decisions. And I
Yeah.
told you offline too, we had a newborn. So
Yes.
when the doctors pulled me in to tell me that, she wasn't going to pull through, most likely, like my wife was breastfeeding our daughter. So that I was
Oh,
alone.
gosh.
And then like I had to be the one to like go tell her, like, I think you need to be prepared that Mikayla's not going to walk out of this.
Oh,
So,
heavens.
just a really hard thing. So I don't know. I think it's always going to be hard,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any like rhyme or reason to it. Um, I hope that losing a child's the most difficult thing I'm ever going to walk through.
Mhm.
But it's, I don't know that it's like, if there's like a shock and sudden versus like a long drawn out process. I think it's grief. It's just
Yeah.
different.
Right.
And just seeing too, like even like my wife grieved differently than me.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yes.
it's like, even like we're grieving the same person and it's our daughter, like the grief is just different. Kind of like learning and walking through that journey together of like how you, and then like even seeing the kids, like our kids were so young. We had a newborn, and then we had twins that were 3.
Oh,
And so
wow.
like, they barely remember Mikayla, they remember some things. In some ways you're like grateful for that because there's not a lot of trauma there. Like
Yes.
they don't,
Yeah.
they don't remember like the funeral that well. They don't remember like the trauma that we went through. But in another sense, it's like, they're just starting to ask these like really deep questions now
Mm,
of like, oh, I have a sister that I don't really know, like,
yeah.
and so kind of see them kind of, it's a different grief, but they're starting to have this grief of like they have this sister that they don't know, that they don't interact with, that's
Right.
part of our family and part of our story, but they're never going to know that
What?
well or
Right.
remember.
Right.
Yeah. And then the newborns, like our new children, like, well, they
We'll
won't know her
never
at
know.
all,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Golly, I think about being a first time parent and the whole just being pregnant and going through that whole process, not really knowing what to expect. I, it just floors me when I hear you say, like, that was one of your first ultrasounds that you found out that information.
yeah.
I mean, when you first heard that, what was the initial thought, the initial
Yeah.
feeling that you I've had?
I I describe it like I don't know if you ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan,
Yeah. Yep.
but there's this or any war movie you want to think. I describe it like those scenes when you hear the bomb go off and there's like that ringing,
Yes.
on the screen. You just hear that, and like
Yeah.
you can't see anything. It's just kind of disorienting. Like that's how it felt to me. Is like that someone just kind of came in and dropped a bomb and I'm just disoriented and I'm trying to figure things out. And, just to like, there was, I don't know how much deep to go into this, but like, there was even talk at that point of like, if we wanted to keep her,
Okay.
it's kind of like, that was the conversation with the doctor
Mm.
of like, hey,
Mhm.
do you even
Mhm.
want to keep this child kind of
Yeah.
thing? And, my wife and I are very religious. So, we wanted to, keep her, and like that
Mhm.
wasn't even really on the table for us, but that was still
Yes.
like, you're still trying to deal with that. Like,
Mhm.
like that conversation, like you're having that conversation almost first,
For
like,
sure. Yeah.
um, it was a different time in the state of Tennessee too. I know there's different laws now, but,
Right.
so like for us, I think it was disorienting, but, I think at that point we really just held firm to our faith,
Yeah.
and it was, hey, we're going to walk this out. And, if she survives the pregnancy, because we didn't even know that, right? If
Yeah.
she survives the pregnancy, then we're going to take whatever comes and just try to, I really, in her lifetime too, I always tried to like look at her life as a blessing instead of a burden.
Yes. Yeah.
And that wasn't always easy, but I
Imagine.
just felt like she taught me so much,
Mhm.
and still does.
Yeah.
But I've really just always tried to take it as like, hey, if she's here, this is not a burden to us.
Yeah.
This is just my daughter. This is how I know this is who she is.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think we tried to look at it from that perspective, and then it's funny. The next ultrasound we found out we had twins.
Oh gosh, with your next
So
pregnancy.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
So I remember like that kind of being
like
like,
your
okay, so we're gonna have a special
first
needs child, and now we're gonna have twins, and twins didn't run in either of our families.
oh my goodness.
So that was like a complete shock. And the thing I remember from that was, I just remember turning to my wife and like, I'm continually surprised at what God thinks we can handle.
Wow, Graham.
So, just,
Yes.
so that was the point. Now I sleep well. I did not sleep super well. We had the twins. I mean, they
For sure.
were, we had one that woke up every hour and
Oh
wanted to be
no.
fed. And we had one, and then they like weren't on the same sleep schedule. So we tried
Oh
to put them on the
no.
same sleep schedule. And then Mikayla didn't always, she had different like brain wave things. So she didn't
Yeah.
always sleep super well. And then like
Mhm.
sometimes you'd have to plug in her food overnight. So,
Mhm.
um, that's like I legitimately do not remember the first 6 months of the twins' lives very well. I
Wow,
just don't
right.
like. It's kind of I'd remember some things, but I'll look at pictures and I'm like, I just don't remember.
You remember being there in that
Yeah,
place.
I'm
Yeah.
just like it's almost like this black.
Yeah.
I just it's not like I blacked it out, but it was just
Well,
exhausting and
yes, exhausting. And the
like
whole process of taking care of a child with a disability, a young child, like, so if your twins would have been 3 months old, Mikayla would have been
almost 3.
3. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know that did you ever get used to that routine?
Yes. Yeah. I feel like we very much did.
Okay.
We really had. I mean, um, got used to like that routine, and then we added another one. Right? She was a newborn.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say too. Like I think Mikayla's life, like even before she passed, like it opened up. You kind of talk about the changes that I went through,
Mhm.
but I always say I was like open to life, but I
Mhm.
think she just really opened us and our family up to like welcoming new life in. And
Yeah.
so, and I think that even remained like as she passed away, like that thought process of like welcoming new life or whatever it may be, whether it was even like we haven't adopted, but even if it was like through adoption or whatever it may be, just welcoming life just became really part of the story and just the things that she taught us, I think.
Yes.
So
Sounds like that's part of a larger plus, if you will, of Mikayla and her disability as a whole. I mean, I think a lot of times you could look at disabilities and be, like you said, I think that perspective that you chose to have about this is not a burden. This situation it is what it is. And we're going to look at it from a place of it's a blessing and what can we learn from it and what can she give to us
mhm.
just as much as what we can give to her. So that equal shared position, if you will. I think that's really healthy. And I wonder, was that something that took a bit for you to come to, or was that always something you think maybe your faith was driving that bus for you as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah. Oh no, I've always thought that way. No, I mean it's definitely something that you come to.
Mhm.
And I even look at I've learned so much more now at Tucker's house, even of seeing like the different broad range of disabilities. And so, a lot of people when they think Tucker's house too, they think physical disabilities, wheelchairs.
Mhm.
We help a lot of children with autism.
Okay.
And sometimes in those cases, it's actually making the house less accessible because
Okay.
they're
Yeah.
prone to getting out, they're flight risk,
Yes.
they have elopement issues.
Yeah.
And so, I've even sat there and thought that like, Mikayla was so sweet and so loving and really like she was like this ultimate reminder of like, she had deaf blindness too. So
Mhm.
even though her eyes could see, but her brain couldn't process very well what she was seeing.
Yeah.
And so like she had a cochlear implant and everything, but you really had to like if you were going to like connect with her, you had to be like really still and
Yeah.
really intentional and just be with her.
Oh,
There,
you know
you
what?
couldn't like be on your phone or like you had to like, be right there with her, connect with
Mhm.
her, and so that is different though. It's like I just wonder, like go into some of these family situations where, the child's just like knocking out the drywall and
Yes.
destroying the TV
Yeah.
or, getting in the liquor cabinet and drinking all the liquor and having to have their stomach pumped. Like
Yes.
I also just wonder like if it would it have been different if it was that type situation.
Right.
So I don't want to just say it's like a blanket, I think that was what Mikayla taught me, but I don't want to say like there's not other challenges and
Mhm.
because I think some parents could well, look, but Mikayla was super sweet. Like my child hits me and
Yeah. It's
cusses at
different.
me and it's different,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So
And I
but
think
for me, yes, that was a process. I think my faith definitely
Mhm.
drove that process.
Yeah.
And I even had a coaching business for a while around that of, I started a blog back when
Okay.
blogging was a thing.
Yes.
Frogging doesn't even exist now.
Yeah.
But
Right.
just kind of like writing about some of the lessons that Mikayla's life taught me. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was even something like I called it the blessing choice, that, you can view things as blessings that other people view as burdens. And that can really change, that perspective.
For sure.
Marcel, our mutual friend, makes fun of me because I used to say a lot, you know, um, look at if the things you look at, change, like change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change, like that play
Yeah.
on words. Like
Love
if
it.
you change the way you look at it, the things you look at change. So kind of that you can choose how to view it. And I can't remember who that's not my quote. That is,
No, I've heard
it was
that
like
before.
Parker Palmer, maybe, I
Mhm.
think. And so he still he still likes to say it's like, hey, well, just change the way you look at it. If I like complain or
Oh.
something, he's like, just change the way you look at things, and things look at change. So,
But there's such a
yeah,
foundational truth to that. And you may not necessarily, I think that's where faith comes in too, because you may not necessarily see that change like physically in front of you. It may not happen like an instantaneously, ooh, it's dropped from the clouds,
right.
eh, but it's about having that faith that choosing that. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody about choice, making a choice to go this direction versus this direction, and just allowing it with no expectations to just be what it's going to be, and
Yeah.
flowing with it. I love what you said about Mikayla being so sweet and having to be very still and very intentional about communicating with her. That had to, if you look back at that now, what kind of blessing was that for you as a parent to your other kids?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I think she has taught me so much about parenting. But also, like, I think it just made me very cognizant of nonverbal, because she was not verbal too. I
Mhm.
think that's the other piece. Like, she never talked to me. I think
Yeah.
that was ultimately too. I think one of the reasons she passed is because she couldn't tell us there was a problem,
What was
right?
going
Like,
on? Yeah.
what was going on, or like, I just think about my other kids. Like, they'll come tell me my stomach hurts, my head hurts. Like,
Yeah.
she couldn't communicate that way with
Yeah.
us. So I think it really helped me pick up on more like nonverbal cues.
Mhm.
I think that's been helpful. So the other piece of our story, so we have 5 girls, and now we do have one son now.
Okay,
He's the little
you've
boy.
added a male to
Yeah.
the brood.
To the
And there
brood.
you go.
But I can't say that was on purpose, but he's in there. He's the caboose there.
That's good.
Um, but you know, I think it's just helped me with the other kids, even like, not to stereotype or anything, but I think, I've just noticed in raising girls, and again, I know my son's 1, so maybe there's some of this too, but there's just a more propensity, like I'll just kind of like tell it like it is, and there's a little bit more of like nuance, like,
Yes.
so like even this morning, like one of our 9-year-olds, I'm like, she's saying something, and I just like, really took her. I'm like, okay, everybody leave. Like, we just spent some extra time this morning before we went off to school of like, tell me what's really going on, because I don't think
Okay.
what you're saying is actually what's going on underneath. And she's like, well, I'm just feeling a little jealous of my sister, so
Yeah.
it's like not taking it at face value. I think she just opened up this piece of like looking at what's underneath and what's going on.
Mhm.
And yeah, just being intentional. And I also don't want to get on some podcast to make it sound like I'm the perfect dad. I mean, I screw up, I get angry,
Yeah.
I look at my phone like when I
We
shouldn't
all
be on
do.
my phone or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
But I do think there are those moments when like there was like a moment, like not like 2 weekends ago, I think, that I was like on my phone and I was feeding my 1-year-old or something like that, and I just had this moment of like, hey, if I was here with Mikayla, like I need to put the phone down, like I just need to be with him, right?
Yeah.
And not like doing something for work or looking at what's going on Facebook or whatever it is. Like I just need to be in this moment.
Mhm.
So, but I do like, I think sometimes you like see these podcasts and social media and you think, oh, well, Graham's got this all. I don't have it all figured out. I
Yeah.
screw up
No,
plenty. But
I
I
don't
do
think
think
any of us
there
do.
are those subtle things that she imparted to me that will always be a piece of me that will always be part of my story. That will always be part of my parenting and the way, and just the way I live.
Yes.
And even like as a executive director, there's tough calls that I have to make with
Right.
staff. And I think
Right.
even that perspective, it informs that. And so, I've in a sense had to. I think it's there's this book, Chip and Dan Heath, they talk about the power of moments.
Okay.
And there's even like a chapter in the book that they talk about, these moments can lead you to growth. And they even like have this kind of subset chapter. They're like, hey, another area you can grow is from grief. And it's kind
Yeah.
of like they didn't want to make that like part of like the book, but
Right.
they're saying, and I
Right.
think that's kind of what I have
Mm-hmm.
experienced is it's like I'd do anything to take it back. But,
Mm-hmm.
walking this road has led to like I've just had to deal with more and like led to growth in all kinds of different facets
Mm-hmm.
of life and even in leadership.
For sure.
That it's like I don't really want to have that.
Yeah.
I'd give it back in a second and have her with me, but
Yeah.
it's led to some of these areas and just really dealing with I think that's the other thing is just forced me any demons or
Mm-hmm.
like challenges like I'm it's like I've kind of learned I have to face those head on.
Right. It's not going away. You
Yeah,
got to go through it. I
yeah,
think too, if you think about somebody that has lost something, so if we're thinking about somebody that maybe gets hit in the eye and loses vision in one eye for a period of time, and then you go,
sure,
or this is a really interesting way. Like when I have a terrible head cold, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what was it like when I could breathe through my nose? Like,
right, yeah,
right? When you think about all of those things before,
yeah,
you want that back because that's a comfort and that's something that but your other senses along the way will heighten. And I think what you're speaking of is that intentionality and that awareness was heightened in you. So it's not
hmm
about that Graham's got it all figured out as a parent of 5 kids that is sleeping just because like as soon as his head hits a pillow.
right,
Because
right,
we're all struggling as parents. We
yeah,
all do. And there is absolutely no premise to say that you've got it all figured out. But the point I think that is really genuinely relatable, and back to that word again, is that awareness that you had to learn in a very
hmm
difficult situation is something it's like the volume has been turned up. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
And you realize how important that part is. And what a gift to your other children having that experience with Mikayla was for you, probably your wife as well.
yeah, 100%. And that there's always going to be a piece of me that wishes that they had more time with her.
Yeah.
Like because I think she could have also taught them. I think now she gets the proxy,
Yeah.
like our other children get the proxy of us parenting them, but they won't have that direct same learning experiences of, like having like even like our twins are just kind of getting old enough where they could help feed Mikayla, like they would have
Yeah.
helped feed her, they would have helped change her, like so but I also know like sometimes they call like in our world they call like the siblings of children with disabilities like the invisible children because it's
Okay.
kind of like so much focus goes on the child with disabilities and so much care
Uh-huh.
that they just kind of feel invisible,
Yeah.
because it's like, well, I'm healthy, like I don't, I've even seen that, like, so we do a house to home video series. I don't know if you've seen any of that. It's
Yes.
on for Tucker's House. And so, it's like our take on a HGTV type style show.
Mhm.
And then like, I've even seen that with some of the kid, like the siblings will just make comments like, oh, here's another, video for so-and-so,
Oh,
kind of like,
wow, Graham.
like they're just kind of used to all the attention having to go that way. And
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
so I don't know, like we've also tried to, you try to balance that piece too of like, well, what would that have been like for them over time? And then
Mhm.
even, something we've been keenly aware of is, when you have a child that passes, a lot of times as parents, like you almost treat the child like they were perfect, and you kind of compare them like, so
Oh.
and so wouldn't do that. Like, why are you doing that? So we
Mhm.
try to be very aware of not like putting Mikayla on this pedestal that they can't reach.
Right. Even
just
with a
saying like,
disability. Yeah. Because she's
yeah,
your firstborn as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we do our best to kind of, um, encapsulate her. But even, like, I don't know, it's just complicated. But like, even like they draw family pictures and sometimes they'll include her and sometimes not, or,
Yeah.
just not making it like, well, you should have drawn Mikayla here. Cause it's like, it's
Right.
not their experience, right? Like
Right.
our 2-year-old doesn't know, like she draws a family picture. Like she never met Mikayla. Mikayla's just kind of a picture on a wall right
Right.
now. She may understand later. So,
For sure.
um,
That's
so
really
it's just,
interesting. But I
just
think
the
you
different dynamics.
absolutely. And I think a lot of that has to do with probably the fact that your wife and you are, again, I just go back to that solid foundational faith piece that you have, because I think that's such a big part of how you have articulated and moved through the time that you were gifted as being Mikayla's parents, if you will,
Hmm.
and how all of that transpired. And I mean, can you explain what a day in the life looked like and taking care of her?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times it was, waking her up, getting her dressed. She liked to get out of her clothes a lot. So we had to like get special clothes where she couldn't
Okay.
like wriggle out. She loved to be naked.
Oh goodness.
Um, so like, we put her in kind of like these specialty clothes that she couldn't get out of. And they even had like a zipper because
Okay.
she fed through a G tube. So, we kind of start there. And then she had seizures. So she was on this special medicine. And then her food was all like, this custom food that was we ordered in. So
Yeah.
we would, wake her up, get her dressed, and then, give her medicine, give her food. And then we'd like, usually the night before, we'd have everything packed out of, so when she go to school, like the nurse would have to give her the other food. So, and then if
Okay.
she was still in diapers, so we'd like pack up the diapers and
Mhm.
wipes and the, supplies and everything. So we'd like put that in like a little backpack. So we get that already. And then, at the end of her life, she's in kindergarten. So, you know, before it was daycare, a
Yeah.
daycare type situation, that was an inclusive daycare. At,
Mhm.
at the end, it was, we would take her to school, and then her school happened to be, where the twins was right next to where the twins went to daycare.
Yeah.
So we kind of like drop her off at school. We'd go all in together.
Okay.
They let us go in because she was in a wheelchair. Like,
Mhm.
usually like the first day everyone goes in, but we would take her all in together, wheel her into her classroom. A lot of times the twins would like hang on the sides of the wheelchair. So we'd like all,
Oh.
go down, drop her off. And then like we would just walk, you could walk them over. So we'd walk the twins off, drop her off, drop them off. And then at that point, it was just us getting ready to go to work. And then, but my wife was on maternity leave when
Okay.
Mikayla passed. We had a newborn, but yeah. And then like she'd have her school day, and then she was at the end there. She actually did aftercare,
Okay.
where they had an aftercare program where the twins were in daycare, so they'd take her over to do aftercare where the twins were.
So they
So
were
then
together then.
they were together. I mean, they were in separate classrooms, but they were there. So we go pick them all up, around like between 5 and 6 when we get off work. And so then at that point, it was like getting her back, changing her, giving her baths,
Mhm.
doing another feeding and another medicine
Yeah.
piece at that time. So, and then yeah, I mean, just taking care of kind of doing the same with the twins. The twins were young enough where there's still like a lot of manual care with them too.
So much for
So
with all three of your children, and then your wife was pregnant with your what would be your fourth? Well, we'll call it your with her third pregnancy.
yes,
Yeah.
yep, yeah, and yeah. Caroline was just. I'm trying to think how old. I mean, I think Caroline was 8 or 9 weeks when Mikayla passed. So
Okay.
we weren't in that routine yet. Like we didn't
Yeah.
have the
Okay.
routine with all of them quite
Yeah.
yet down.
Yeah.
She was still on maternity leave.
Mhm.
So
How
yeah,
hard was this before you found Tucker's house for your family financially? Because I think about the demands
yeah,
of everything that you just listed that would have to go into taking care of not only your special needs daughter, but then you also have twin daughters on top of that too. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't easy.
Mhm.
I will also say though, like we were very fortunate for both my wife and I. We came out of school with no debt, so I
Oh my
think
gosh,
that
that's
was like
great.
really instrumental in helping us.
Mhm.
Um, so it was a struggle. Like we basically knew like we had a $10,000 minimum
Mhm.
insurance, so we basically just budgeted to pay that,
Yeah,
and so we'd usually hit the 10,000 by April. And then so we knew like we just budgeted that, okay, well, we're going to pay $10,000 medical expenses. And then
yeah.
once you hit that deductible, everything
Then
else is
you're done.
covered.
Yeah.
And we did the high deductible plan because of that. So it's like,
Yes.
the PPO option, you're 80%, and then you have to cover 20%. We just kind of like, okay, we're just going to hit the 10 grand because we know we're going to hit it. And then
Right.
everything's covered. Um, and then, yeah, the twins and daycare, it was a lot. I mean, my wife and I had a discussion where there was a little bit of time there where it actually cost us more to have her work.
Yeah. I've heard of
Like,
that. That's a real thing for moms,
but
families.
and in her credit, I mean, she loves to work. She
Mhm.
still does, and it's like her staying in the workforce has afforded her to get raises at if she had taken that gap time off, I just don't think necessarily would have happened. So
Right.
um so yeah, I think it was, and I mean it still can be. I mean, we're fortunate to be we're in a much different financial spot than we were back then. But
Yes. Yes.
um yeah, I think it's yeah, there's a reason that Tucker's House exists, because
Mhm.
trying to think about spending 30, 40, $50,000 on home modifications that you
Yeah.
need,
It's overwhelming.
just plus just the time and energy. Like
Yeah.
if you didn't have Tucker's House coming in, even for us, it's a lot. It's like, okay, you
Yes.
got to get the architects, you got to get the contractors on board, you got to line up everything, you got to
Mhm.
make sure one's checking in, you got to make sure they're doing what they said they were going to do, you got to have a contract. Like we're trying to take care of all these pieces so they can just focus on raising their child,
Right.
and
Right.
then they have home that works for them.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's just a lot, but there are a lot of unseen costs. So we have really tried to bake that into our financials too
Mhm.
of Tucker's House. So
Right.
the national statistics are that it is 28% more expensive to live with a disability in the
Okay.
United States.
Okay.
And there's been research in Tennessee, it's actually closer to 52%.
Oh my goodness, it's like double that.
Uh-huh. So, and I don't know if some of that's the services or just, the
Okay.
costs or whatever it may be. We don't know all the, so, but we have taken those statistics and tried to bring that in of like, hey, you know, we take, what is considered poverty level, and we add those costs in, because we
Yeah.
know like, well, okay, even if you're making this, add 28% to that at
Yeah.
least. And then, that's what it's like to live in poverty with a child with disabilities, right?
That's
Outside of
crazy.
just, so
Yeah.
we have tried to, be what I would say like more generous than just the standard of,
Yeah.
a lot of not probably, you just kind of look at the HUD number and say,
Mhm.
okay, well, this is the limit. This is poverty guidelines. This is, so we've added some of those in because
Mhm.
we know that there's just additional costs and therapies and things that insurance doesn't cover. And,
Right. And I don't
that,
think many people would know, and that wouldn't be their first thought, that this is a serious issue that we have to consider as a family and as a household when we have a child with a disability. And how are we going to afford it? And those extra things that come on top of it. I think that understandably, people will look at it and go, oh my gosh, how can we help in terms of just being there, the physicality? What can we do to help the family? What can we do for this situation? But what I love about the Tucker's House organization is that it's, like I said earlier, there's no money out of the pockets of the clients that you're servicing, just because of that awareness and that understanding that things come up. And interesting, the poverty level, like that's the numbers where you have to start at to be able to work your budget to figure out how all that fits.
yeah, well, and just, since we're a fundraising organization,
Mhm.
As I wouldn't, I donate to Tucker's house too, right? Like,
Yeah.
as I wouldn't, like, I wouldn't want to see the money necessarily going to someone with a $2 million house, right?
Right.
Like, there's a certain level of understanding that at some point you have enough resources.
Hmm.
Like, it may still be a struggle, but there's enough resources there that you can afford to
Hmm.
make these home modifications yourself.
Yeah.
And there's just a different level of resources. The situations we're going into, there's just the resources, the backing. It's a lot of single parenthood,
Okay.
um, grandparents taking care of, like maybe even the family, like the mom and dad have left the picture, or just kind of, there's jail or whatever. So it's grandparents taking care of.
Goodness.
So there's just a lot of different situations, but yeah, just a lot. Even I even just think about now, like, you want what's best for your children. So
Yeah.
now there might be what we consider luxuries, like, okay, can we send our kids to swim lessons? Can we send our
Right.
kids to these lessons? Well, for Mikayla, that didn't feel like a luxury. It's like she needs to go to therapy.
It's a
Like, if
necessity.
she's ever gonna walk,
Yes.
or have the potential to reach her potential, whatever that potential may be, we need to do that. And insurance doesn't always cover everything of that. Or,
Right.
Mikayla loved the water. So we ended up doing like swim therapy for
Oh,
her.
yeah.
So, but that was extra. Insurance didn't deem that as necessary,
Hmm.
but it's like that's where she thrived, because I think it's the only place their head didn't feel so heavy. So,
Right.
like, we worked with the Nashville Dolphins, who has a swim program, but she had
Yes.
extra. So, just things like that, where it's like some of the expenses didn't feel as much as luxuries. Like, I think our kids, yes, I want them to be able to swim, but if
Right.
they didn't have, they'd be fine if they didn't have swim
Right.
lessons. But that felt a little bit different with Mikayla. It's like, well, if she doesn't have swim therapy, like, she's really not, functioning at her level of ability, and she's really gonna, not thrive as much as she
Yeah.
could have.
She's not getting that movement. She's not getting, like
Mhm.
you said, that's something that really would sit with her, that could help her thrive. Thrive is a great word for it. Absolutely. And I think it's really interesting too. I got to go back to the word perspective that
Yeah.
you shared earlier, because for me, it's like, yeah, a lot of people look at the swim lessons as your example, as being that's their family's necessity, but it's not something. It's not for everyone. You know what I mean? It's a different it's a different picture, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting. And I think that a lot of people just don't, unless you're in that position, I don't think you understand it necessarily. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's given me a lot of perspective. I have to say too, I've lived with a child with disabilities, but
Mhm.
I haven't lived in poverty. I don't know what that situation feels like.
Yeah.
I think I have learned that more working with the families that we work with in certain,
Right.
socioeconomic statuses. It's like, I can't know, even in that perspective, even though, yes, it was like, I will say it was a financial burden, but like I said, we were never going into like heaps of medical debt or any of these
Yeah.
type things. We always had insurance. We always had work.
Yeah.
So I can't even say, like, I truly hold the perspective there of
Yeah.
like what some of the families like, and we've been fortunate, like we've stayed married. I mean,
Well, that's another
if
thing.
one
That's
of
a great
us,
point.
was a single parent, we're trying to do this all on our own. Like, I don't know.
Mhm.
There's a whole nother layer there that even I can't truly, I can relate, but I
Mhm.
can't, I just don't look at the families we serve and say, hey, I understand everything you're going through. Cause I just
No.
don't. I don't.
Right. Well, you're honest about that, and you're forthright about that. And you're sharing the experience that you do know. And you're also sharing a piece of you that's very empathetic and to their cause. So as much as you don't understand it, I think that's a really valuable piece. It's not that you're pretending to understand the family's positions, but there's a relatability there and an empathy there and an understanding, an underlying understanding about the struggle as a whole that they're in.
Mhm.
And even and I'll go as far as to say maybe even the grief, because I can imagine like your perspective and your thought pattern could have gone a whole different direction when you found out that she was suffering from this before she was even born. And the choice that you made, I'm understandably, there's probably moments of those grieving kind of like, oh gosh, this is not what we anticipated as new first time parents. But I think as I'm talking to you here today, I'm seeing a really interesting and beautiful light around the fact that it's a choice. you've made a choice to follow that. She's not a burden. She's a blessing. And this is what we're going to dive into and what she can give back to us just as much as in return, the opposite direction. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it is. And it's, I like what you said just about perspective. It's just a perspective that we as a family have tried to carry, because you kind of know when you have these like real pivotal moments, it's like it can break you,
Yeah.
like there's still moments, that I'm just like, I don't know, can I hold all this together?
Yeah.
It's like you can see where you could go down so many paths.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think just trying to have that perspective, and then, and like you said, I think it really just goes back to faith. Like I understand, I guess, how people could do it, but I wouldn't want to, necessarily like walk this path without some sort of faith that I'm going to see her again.
Yeah.
That I believe that they're, so it's, I don't know. It's, I don't care if it's wishful thinking or not, it's like, that's my belief. And,
yes, it's your
it's
conviction.
Like, yeah, it's my conviction. It's my faith. And so that's kind of how I just continue to try to, and incorporate, like, she's always going to be part of, and whether wherever we go,
Right.
she's always going to be part of my life and our family. And I think too, just seeing her, like, our family's stories, like it's going to pass down. Like, that's the other thing I've just seen with Tucker's house too, is like, even like donors and things, like they it's a really tangible thing we do. You can like see, this is what the bathroom looked like before and this is the bathroom after.
Right.
But it's like sometimes I think, we lose perspective of, well, like even that child, like I think about the invisible child, right? Like we're making it easier for that family to care for their child in that home. Well, how much like extra time is that going to give them to make their other child not feel so invisible?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, like these things last generations.
Yes.
It's like,
amen.
It's like I'm a product of my parents and they're a product of their parents. And, like all these things get passed down. So I think it's also trying for us to keep that perspective of like, well, if we don't have this perspective here and, Mikayla dies, then all of a sudden, like our family tree, like that's passed down to all our kids, and they don't have great relationships with their kids. And, so trying to keep perspective on that, but also in the home modification process, like, hey, because the modification is really expensive, and sometimes you want to see like, okay, I donate this money, I have all this impact, right? You want to see hundreds of numbers. It's like, well, we're doing this really expensive thing here, but this is going to last. This is going to change this family's direction in perpetuity.
Yes.
And I think just keeping that perspective, just, we're only here for like a short amount of time, but like the impact lives on, like whether we think we see it or not. It's like, well, yeah, it does. So
absolutely. It's that trickle down effect. And I love how you talked about the generational stuff, because this is something we can talk about, generational trauma, and like the buck stops here. Like I'm in therapy or whatever, but addictions, I'm going to be the one that's going to stop this situation. But if we're looking at it from this situation and the circumstance, I love what you said about the modifications not only being for the child with a disability, but you're looking at it for the family as a whole, and how that can give that space, like you just said, to be able to allow more time with what they term the invisible children that may be in the family, the ones that are not getting that time just because of the circumstances, and what that could cause for them if they did not get that opportunity to have more space with their parents, with their sibling, or that connectivity that they can have with their family. And therefore then like the connectivity they can have with maybe the disabled sibling that they have too. They could just open up a whole realm of a whole other realm of empathy and love and endurance and just graciousness for other individuals, if you will.
and they may be able to assist with the modifications too of like now, okay, now I can give my sister and help my parents get a breather, right?
Oh,
Because
I love it. Yes.
whatever
Yeah.
it may be. Because a lot of times it's even the sibling. Like we want to think about the parents doing the manual lifting, but a lot of times it's the older siblings too.
Mhm. Yeah.
They're having rotator cuff issues and things like that because they're manually lifting their brother or their sister as a teenager, and
Yeah.
just that repetitive
Repetitive
lifting
motion.
motion, and it's just like lifting too much weight,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
when you're too young, like
Yeah.
so just the injuries that can cause, and
Yeah.
like long term issues it can cause. So yeah, I think it's we know that we're not going to fix everything in these families' lives, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate our mission of like, well, we can come in and do this one thing that may alleviate some of the other area. Like we can't fix everything, but it's going to be this one place. And I just always think too, it's like your home is supposed to be this place of respite. It's like the one place, right, that you can feel at home and comfortable with
Safe.
whatever it is,
Yes. All of it.
and it's like if your home is just an extra place of struggle and burden, and then it's like, where do you have to go?
Yeah.
It's like just trying to bring that. It's like, hey, there's a lot of obstacles that you're going to face outside in the world. Like the world's not made for your child.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the spaces, the playgrounds, a lot of time, I mean, we have inclusive playgrounds and things, but a lot of times, like things aren't made for a child that's not typical, but at least your home can be that place for you now where it is like more safe, and you have that place that you can go. So.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really great way to look at the bigger picture of it and what that mission is that Tucker's House is doing. So tell me when it was that you got involved with Tucker's House. You said it happened pretty quickly because the owner at the time wanted to say,
Yeah.
oh, okay, like over the course of 2 years, but 2 months later during COVID, when
Yeah.
all that happened. This was after
Pre-COVID. If it was in COVID, I'm not sure I would have signed up. I don't know.
You're right.
I may have. I'm just saying, like, so it'll be 4 years next month.
Okay.
So I joined in April of 2020. So yeah, it'll be 4 years next month. And then it was just really a conversation with the founder. I was connected to a different organization that I knew from running the golf tournament for Tucker's House, that they utilized the software. And so they had reached out. They were actually interviewing me. And so I just reached out to the founder and said, hey, would you put in a good word for me?
Okay.
And then like I got this like all caps. If you knew our founder, it makes sense to you, but I love her to pieces. So he's
Okay.
sent me like this all caps email. I guess she woke up at like 2 a.m. in the morning, and I like woke up to this email in like all caps, like, are you looking for a job? Like God woke me up in the middle of the night, put on my heart that you should be the next executive director of Tucker's House. And she went this whole thing about 2 years, like in 2 years, I'm looking to retire. Da, da, da. And so, I just was like, hey, I'm super honored, too, because it was still hard for me at that point to like think about, she's the founder, right? She was like the face. And it was hard for me, like, how do you transition from Tucker's House from Sunny? Like Sunny is Tucker's House, right?
Yes.
So her grandson's Tucker, that's the name. Like it's so, it was so enmeshed with her. Mm-hmm. And so I said, yeah, well, I'm interviewing for this job. So I guess, let's just talk in 2 years and we'll see where we're at.
Okay.
And then it was like, okay, and then she just went to she went to the board and was like, hey, Graham's like, I think he'd be the person, and, he's going to take this other job. You guys need to like get on this. And so we just started interviewing. I started interviewing at Tucker's House, and kind of in tandem with that other role. Yeah, I mean, Tucker's House just pulled my heartstrings. Like that other role, there's going to be a lot more financial benefits and, all other kind of benefits. But I just was like, well, at that point too, I mean, Mikayla, she passed in September of 2018. So, you think about like the end of 2019, like I was still pretty heavy in the throat. I mean, I'm always grieving, but really, that first year is just, I call it the year of firsts, just so difficult. And so, there was just really in the midst of even that heavy grief of, how am I, what's the next steps? Like, what does this
Right.
look like? And so, it was like, I think this makes sense for a time,
Okay.
just to like be able to do this, to hold Mikayla close, to, help these families. And, it's, yeah, I haven't regretted it, but I will say it's been tough taking over a nonprofit
Yeah.
and from the founder in the
Yes.
pandemic. And, she held a lot of institutional knowledge too, like a lot of construction backgrounds. We've really shifted the model
Okay.
too. Like we outsource a lot of those things now.
Mhm.
So, it's been a labor of love, I would say,
Yes.
but it's just like caring with a child with disabilities. It's kind of been the same of, it's I didn't just, hey, we're going to step into this and it's just running on all cylinders. And
Yeah.
not to diminish what the founder did. It's just, it's a complicated thing that,
Yeah.
I even was having a conversation yesterday with one of our donors, and it's like, look, even the other EDs that I talk to, it's like, if they're running a food bank, it's great thing,
Mhm.
but it's not that complicated, right? You get the food, you make the
Mhm.
food, and whatever it is. There may be complications within the family, but it's like we are contracting with physical therapists,
So
we're
many moving
contracting
parts.
architects, we're
Mhm.
contracting with general contractors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something goes wrong and there's all kinds of liability. And we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars here. This is
Yes.
somebody's existing home structure.
Yes.
Even like the whole Habitat thing, it's like Habitat's doing new construction. So if a volunteer
Much
goes in
different.
and messes something up, well, you just take it down and rip, but no one's living there. This family is living there. So if we
Yeah.
go in and we hit the wrong pipe or flood something, it's like, okay, well, we got to go in and fix that. And
Yeah.
it's an
Yep.
extra, it's already difficult for them not to have their bathroom or whatever for that time period. So
Oh, right. Yeah.
there's
Think about
just,
that.
all these different like factors.
Mhm.
So it's been good. I enjoy the challenge, but there are some days I'm like, man, like, could this be simpler? Could
Yeah.
this just be
Yeah.
like a
I
little,
imagine. Imagine.
simpler?
What are the current needs of Tucker's House? What is it that you're looking for the most in the organization as we are speaking today? What is it? Is it um, volunteers? Is it donors? Tell me a little bit more about where your trajectory is now that coming out of COVID and surviving all of that. And then the transition from the founder of the company in general to
Mhm.
someone else, to yourself, and keeping the company at a fluid place where it can continue to grow just as much as stay stay present for what it offers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two biggest needs today are, you know, really financial support
Mhm.
and then awareness support.
Okay. Okay.
So
Tell me
one
about
is
that
obviously
awareness
like,
piece.
yeah, so if you happen to like watch House to Home and you want to share that, it's like
Mhm.
getting the word. Like we are very grassroots, like Middle Tennessee based. You know, we get calls from all over though. I
Okay.
mean, we get calls from New York, Pennsylvania,
Oh, wow.
Oregon. There's even been like emails from abroad,
Wow.
Honduras. Like, it's like the need is there outside of just our community. So I think
Yes.
it's making people aware of the need. And,
Yeah.
we'd love to be able to possibly expand our footprint someday. But again, part of that's just, it's the complicated model. It's like, how do you take this complicated thing and expand it in a way that's makes sense, that's sustainable.
Yes.
So I think it's just getting the word out, if and even just letting families know if they're in need of services, but
Mhm.
just engaging and sharing the content, sharing like we've really come a long way in getting the word out and having these videos and really highlighting the need. So engaging from awareness
Mhm.
standpoint, because a
It's
lot of
called
times
House.
that actually leads to the financial support, right? Someone
Yes.
watches the video, watches a house to home episode, and you see they set up a monthly recurring donation because they want to be a part. So
House to Home. That's the video series that you're talking about.
yes, house to home, you can find it on our YouTube channel, or if
Mhm.
you just go to our website tuckershouse.org, there's a button up there that says house to home videos.
And
You
that's
can watch
giving, I
episodes.
watched a couple, that's giving you like firsthand information about how this is really helping families and what you're doing different for them to change their footprint, basically, to make things
Yeah.
easier for them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's pretty cool. It's,
Yeah.
you really get the full behind the scenes look. We're not a TV crew, so it's not exactly like fully HD TV, but it's like, we're really giving you behind, like, hearing the family story, seeing what the bathroom was like before, what the struggles were, to the after piece of like, now this is what this is what this means for this family. This is the generational help that you're providing. So,
Mhm.
I do appreciate, despite the difficulties, it is something very tangible that I appreciate that we can do. Is like, I can take, if you donate to Tucker's House, it's like, look, this is what this bathroom or this floor or this doorway or this, a house with no ramp looked like before.
Yeah.
Here it is afterward. Like, you made that happen. You
Yes.
supported to make that happen. I really appreciate that. Is sometimes like, because even in our world, like, there's mental health, factors that we try to
Sure.
quantify and show, but sometimes those things are just harder to tangibly show. Not that it's not important. I know it's important. I'm not
Right.
diminishing it, but it's harder to show, like, the mental health impact of how, this changed to here.
Mhm.
But
And
I
understanding
appreciate
that
the tangible
generational thing, like you
piece.
were talking about too, just
Yes.
really that it's that unseen kind of piece, if you
Yeah.
will. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
tangible part is brilliant. And that's great. I love that you have those videos that people can really sink their teeth into and look at and go, this is what it's doing. This is what it's making a difference with. And then there's just so much room there. So much room there. I love it. I love it. Man, I thank you so much for all of your information and
Yeah.
tuckershouse.org.
Yes.
Okay. And we want to grow this company and grow this awareness so that it can help so many different people. I really, really relate to that generational piece. I think that's a really brilliant springboard to go on, because who doesn't want to make a change in their life and really make a change for their kids, and all of that moving forward. That's what we want. We want to leave the world and our place better for our
Right.
children, for the
Yeah.
generations after us.
It's your legacy. It's very much your
It's
legacy.
Yeah, it's your legacy. Yeah. Mic drop moment. It's your legacy. It's great. It's great.
Oh,
Before I let you go,
sure.
Graham, are you cool with doing some fun little rapid fire questions?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. I
Yeah.
always try to do this at the end of our conversations just because I feel like it just kind of provides people another layer of who we're talking to. And we talk about that relatability piece and just see another side of your personality and kind of what
Yeah.
makes you tick, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
by the way,
I am a little more contemplative, so we'll see about the rapid, but I'll answer them.
that's
If you need rapid, that's my wife. I'm more like the slow, like,
well,
but yes, I'm happy to answer the questions. We'll see about rapid fire though.
we will fit well together because actually last week on an interview, I gave kind of a little bit more one, and a couple of these will be a little more in depth. So,
Yeah.
and at the end of one question, it was like a minute and a half later, and my guest just laughed. Is like, well, I guess that wasn't really rapid fire. I'm like, I'm
That
not
is
rapid
that is so
fire. So
me.
come
That is
up
so
with
me.
another.
And Marcel, you put Marcel and I together, it's like, you just forget about it.
I can imagine.
A 15-minute meeting is going to take an hour easily. Just get us
I can
going.
see
So,
that. That's so fun. Okay, Graham, we're gonna go with it though. We're gonna do
okay.
the best we can. You and I.
Okay.
Here we go.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
cool. Question one: what is one subject that you would like to learn more about?
So, I think I'll go with like a hobby on this
Okay.
one. So, I'm going to go back to golf.
Oh
So,
yes.
having been a golf professional, I still play a lot of golf. I love it. So, if you find me like outside of, just work time, like, it's usually like I'm trying to like learn more about golf,
Yeah.
or it's leadership. It's one of those two things. Like, I'm trying to read a book on leadership just to be a better leader to our team and
Love
lead
it.
the organization. But it's golf and leadership. Maybe I should launch a thing about leadership golf. That should be my thing. That'll be my next venture.
Yes.
Leadership golf company, and we talk about leadership on the golf course
Oh my gosh.
for CEOs.
Stamp it. Let's
Yeah.
go. Stamp it. Let's do it. Yeah. Perfect. All right. So that was pretty good on rapid fire. That
Okay.
didn't take
All
but
right.
more
We'll
than
take
maybe
it.
about 45 seconds or so.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
I'm right. I'm saying this. I'm laughing because I'm right there with you, man.
Okay,
Right there
okay.
with you. All right. Question number 2. What dish do you cook the best? Do you cook?
Yes, I do. I'm gonna go with burgers. I
Okay.
make a really good burger. Put some olive oil and some garlic flakes in there, some onion. I put onions in the patties
Ooh,
and on top. So you kind of
good.
like you put the onion in the patty. So
Yes.
yeah, my kids love when I make burgers.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go with that, and I could put, I know I got the timing down because I almost feel like a sous chef sometimes. We got 5 meal, you're making 7 meals,
Yeah,
7 top, right?
dude.
We're 7 top, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, my wife likes things more well done. I'm more medium. Like some of the kids like it me, so you get it out. Some of them want cheese, so you gotta, figure out all the
I
timing. So
mean, that snapshot right there of I love it. You said we're a 7 top.
here
Like
we are. Yep.
that snapshot gives me just a little bit of anxiety, like fixing burgers for 7 different people with all of the different things that go along with
Yeah. It's honestly less the cooking; it's more the noise.
it.
Like
Okay.
because we usually have like the kids are all on Taylor Swift right now, so we got like Taylor
Yeah.
Swift going on the Alexa. Or,
Yes.
Daddy, what's this homework question? And the 2-year-old's over here just like doing something or like pulling
Oh.
all the cups out of the cupboard. So it's
Oh.
it's it's more like less about the cooking and more like everything else that's going on.
Yes.
So that's where the exhaustion piece comes in. It's like this controlled chaos. Like I
Yes.
bought my wife for Mother's Day this professional chaos coordinator shirt.
Oh, love it.
You know, that's what it feels like. It's just we're just coordinating the chaos. Like it's always chaos. We're just kind of coordinating it,
That's
making
all you
sure it
got
all
to do.
gets
If you
in
can
there.
handle that, you can lead anybody. Golf course on or off too, by the way. Just
Yeah,
want to tell you.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
well,
maybe
you
you
got to be
combine.
careful though. I was with one of our employees, and I said something in a total dad voice, and I apologized afterwards. So I was like, "No, no, you let me finish, and then you can talk."
Oh no.
I was like, "Oh wait, sorry, that came out like because at home, it's like I can't get a word in sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to have a conversation, and it's like, stop it, let me finish, let me just get a sentence in." So,
I love it. Well,
so
at least you
I
caught
can work
yourself.
the opposite way too. And I was like, look, I'm so sorry, Riley. I should not have said it. Like, I did not mean it for it to come out that way. I
Yeah.
did not mean to diminish you. That was just my dad. Like, let me
My bad
finish and then
voice.
you can talk.
Yeah.
So,
It's an honest mistake. And you were
yes.
aware of it. So no harm,
Yeah.
no foul is what I would
Yeah.
say. All
Yeah.
good.
She was good with it too.
That's good.
I think she thought it was more funny than anything. So I was glad.
Is it more uncharacteristic for you to be that way at work?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really try hard. As you can see, like I'm this contemplative. Like I really
Mhm.
probably too deeply I think about, how different things impact. And I just know as a leader, the weight that, I say things and it means something different.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just trying to be very cognizant of being intentional with words, conversations, and how those things whether I want it to or not, it just
Yeah.
carries extra weight and responsibility because, you're the director.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. It does the job is not taken lightly. Not at all. Not when you're a leader in that capacity. No. So good job. Yeah. 2 thumbs up on that one. Let's go. All right. Next question. What
okay.
never fails to make you laugh?
I mean, I'm just going to go back to, just like our kid dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
You got all these different personalities and the stuff that came out with them. And even I will say, hopefully my maybe other kids may watch this podcast, but our daughter Caroline is just funny. I mean,
Okay.
she is like, it's hard to describe. She's got Einstein hair. So she's got hair. She's 5, almost
Okay.
6. We've never cut her hair. It's still
Okay.
short. And she's a towhead, completely blonde, but she's got the Einstein thing going
Oh,
on.
wow.
So her hair is like always like
Super curly, crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she kind of has Einstein brain. I mean, she is just freaking smart
Yeah.
and just the stuff, but super imaginative. So just the stuff that comes out of her mouth,
Yeah.
it's it's just she doesn't even mean to be funny, but we were doing something, and one of the kids asked Alexa something about art, and she was like, "Oh, Daddy, that's like Henry Matisse." Like,
Oh,
who's
what?
Henry? I don't even know who Henry Matisse is. She's like, "Oh, he's a French artist," and I mean, she's 5. She's like, "He's
She
a
knows
French
all this.
artist, and he did all these cutouts and da da da." And I'm just sitting there cracking up. It's just like, I don't even know. Who's Henry Matisse? I don't even know. And she just absorbs like all that information from school like a sponge. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just think the chaos never fails to make me laugh.
Yeah.
And yeah, just yeah, we're a fun bunch, and
It's fun. You're a fun
it can be
mom.
it can be stressful, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like there's also just this pure joy of, like when we go out to eat, that's pretty funny.
I
Like
mean,
if you go out to a restaurant and you're sitting
yeah.
next to us, like everyone just looks at you, right? Like what do y'all do? Like kids everywhere spilling milk on the floor, like throwing chips at the next table over.
Oh
I
my
mean, it's
God.
just it's chaos, but it makes me laugh.
But
I
it's
love
your
it. So,
chaos,
yes.
and one day that chaos will not be that chaos. It'll be something
Yes.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I think like even the 9-year-olds right now, right? They're getting to that stage where they're starting to like grow out of some of the chaos. And it's, there's they're losing that innocence.
They're becoming young
and so even
women.
that you're kind of like, oh, um, I love you, and I'm excited for this next stage that you're there, but it's also, they're yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. I got one more for you. This might be a little bit deeper.
Okay.
What motivates you the most?
Oh man. Despite everything we've talked about on this podcast, is there anything that can motivate me more than that? Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've really touched on it, but I feel like if I'm truly a man of faith, then it's really the faith that drives everything.
Yeah.
Right. It's,
Absolutely.
so yeah, just really trying to live my life by that example. And really, I think being a husband and father comes first. And I think even the work at Tucker's house, like that's an extension of, my vocation. I think, that initial vocation to, being a man of faith, to being a husband and father, and then the extension of that out to, serving the community. And, and I'm very much a firm believer to, people often say, okay, well, you're like an executive director of a nonprofit. Like, they almost put me out almost on the saint status, like, oh, you did this. But it's like, hey, I've had for-profit jobs before too. I worked in golf. That was a for-profit job. Like you can still have a great impact in whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter to me if it's for-profit, nonprofit, whatever the work is, like don't diminish it. It's just do it in the right way. Do it with a service. Like making the profit's not bad, but it's like we all have worked with people. Well, maybe not all. I have worked with people, and I've seen examples of people where like the profit is their purpose.
Yeah.
That's where it's dangerous to me.
Right.
It's like you're just trying to make a buck. You don't give a lick about legacy or all these other things. It's, so I think, whatever it is, just, having the purpose. So I think for me, I think it all goes back to faith, and that's what really motivates me out from everything there. So.
And it sounds like it probably started a long time before you and your wife got pregnant with Mikayla, but it sounds like your faith grew as she grew.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, I think, I think she taught me more about my faith, and I think what it maybe meant to be a true follower of Christ. Like I always say, I still say, and I miss this so much, but it's like, I just felt like, because like I said, you had to be so present with her.
Right.
It's like when you actually got, her eyes locked onto you, I just felt like I was in the presence of divinity sometimes, just like,
I love that.
and just the perspective to, and this isn't a rapid fire thing, but like we would all aspire to have like the impact that Mikayla had. Like when I was at her, we're at her funeral, the number of people that came
Yeah.
and the number of people that were like truly impacted by her life, like I think we would all die happy if we saw like that. And I'm like, okay, here's my daughter. She only lived 5 years. She never spoke a word, couldn't really do much of anything for herself. And she had this kind of impact just being who she was.
Right.
And I think that's the piece that I have tried to, take is like, hey, I would love to have that kind of impact. So, I do have these other abilities that I have to store. I do have the ability to speak and do these other things. So, just really trying to make that has really deepened, I think, that sense of faith, and then just not holding, and then with her death, like, like walking that road and continuing to walk that road and having the other children and just, maybe just trying to hold things with a hand more open, like not trying to control everything because I can't control everything.
Yeah.
So just kind of, doing things that are in my control, but also understanding that I'm a steward. I'm a steward of Tucker's house. I'm a steward of our family or whatever it is. Like I don't truly own and control and have agency in all these things.
Oh, I love that.
I think that's the perspective. You can put things in and take things away. But it's a really hard way to live, having that, because we want to, I think most of us want to have that control. Like, I can do this. I have this agency.
Yes.
But, I think Mikayla was just that reminder of, it's not like we did anything different for her to have special needs, and we didn't do anything different when she was, we just kind of took it as it was. And, it is just that you kind of dealt with what came rather than like, this is what my child's life will look like, right? I will do this. They will go to this school and they will go to college and they will get married. It's like, we didn't have all that. We didn't know, like, it was just day to day. Hour to hour, minute to minute sometimes.
Wow.
Right. Like,
talk about your hands
1 minute. And we didn't know, like, we wanted her to reach her full potential, but had no idea what that potential would look like.
Yeah.
So
no expectations. I think that's a really brilliant way to live. And as much as it was something that you wouldn't wish to happen again in terms of affecting any other children, what a beautiful gift that was for you and your wife to be able to live in that open space, and then to be able to then transition that on to your other children that followed, in terms of being a parent that is intentional with your kids as much as possible. As we know, no one's perfect, right? But knowing that's there, and then living from that place of that, we're not attached to this. It's we're going to have to take care of what comes up when it comes up, with nothing else. We can't control it. We can't hang on to it so tightly. And that just applies to so many different situations in life. Basically, probably every situation that we encounter that's difficult, I will tell you.
Yeah.
Hard to do. But I am so thankful that you shared your why, and your behind the reason for getting involved in the organization that you're in, and the reason for doing it, and how that all transpired for you, and what you did with a situation that you could have gone a completely different way in. So thank you so much for that, and for that openness.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you for, as I mentioned offline, you've done a lot of research, and people probably watch this and think it just kind of happens. Like, I can just tell how intentional you have been and making me feel welcome and being able to share these things in a space. So I appreciate that, and appreciate what you're doing. So,
well, thank you, Graham. Yeah. I appreciate the soul's goals on you today. So
thank you.
tuckershouse.org and the house to home videos. Check them out. Let's grow the awareness. Let's do it. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Control chaos in that household with those. Those 5
yeah, I know. It's getting about that time, right? I'm about to go pick them up. So
it's about school pickup time. Yes. Yeah. All right. You got this. Have a great day, Graham.
All right. You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. If you have an idea for an interview, or you would like to share your own story, I would love to hear from you. send me a message at dawn@thesoulgoals.com. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love for you to leave a review and to consider following and subscribing to the show. With weekly releases, there is always another interesting story to be heard. I do hope that today's guests and their words have helped to bring some extra light to your day and encouraged you to find a deeper space of your very own soul goals. Until next time, friends, remember that everyone has a story, and every story matters.